as I mentioned above, the article that I chose to read to do this reflection was Creating Technology Enhanced Learner Centered Classrooms by Yunjo An and Charles Bregulev. And I just wanted to share a few of the thoughts that it brought to mind after I read it. So I thought that their study on teachers' beliefs, perceptions, barriers, support needs in the context of creating technology enhanced learner centered classrooms was informative. I thought the most interesting and applicable to like my uh, personal development, I guess, as a teacher with technology integration was the 12 learner centered uh, psychological concepts that they cited from the American Psychological Association. So first, I just wanted to I'm gonna have a couple thoughts. Then I'm talking about the definite, their definition of a learner-centered classroom. So technology integration will really do me no good once I get into a classroom if I don't center the use of that technology on my students. For example, I could have a page on my class, on Schoology, assuming that my school uses that platform, of course. But anyway, I could have a page on there that has a requires a high level of reading, but I could all at the same time have a group of students who has who have low reading comprehension skills, which would really impede their learning with that technology because they'll spend all their time more most of their time just trying to understand what they're reading than actually learning, and which would probably be very frustrating for them, which will make them not want to learn what I need them to learn. So what I got from the article as far as what the definition of a learner-centered classroom is, it's teaching the students how to think about how they are thinking. So you know try to guide the students to like the answer of how do you learn best or on this particular subject or just in general. And then it'll just require an effective like process for helping my students to gain that knowledge. So if I'm creating a page and the way it's laid out is really confusing and makes it hard to understand the information that's on there, then that's not going to be an effective process for my students to gain the knowledge that I need them and understanding that I need them to. Because the knowledge and understanding and the understanding won't matter if they can't get through the mental process of doing it. Even if I set up a really good assessment on my Schoology page or whatever platform I might be using. So I just wanted to talk about my thoughts on how I could use the 12 psychological concepts that the authors talk about. So the first one, personalized and customized learning. So I think the biggest part of that stood out to me was students are actively engaged in learning and they're doing it at their own individual pace. So what that will mean for me as a teacher is whether or not I'm creating content that can be engaging, on my LMS platform or the content I'm using in the actual classroom. Regardless of what type of technology I'm using. But I think it's something that's also important is making sure that students are allowed to as much as it's reasonable to go at their own individual pace, because I think, as I remember from my own experience in school, is that too often teachers assume that all the students can go at the exact same pace, which is not true at all. Some students can learn things really quickly, or they might need, require it. It might require that they can take their time to really understand something, and both are equally good. But um, there needs to be a process in there that allows the students to do that. So then there's the social and emotional support. So creating an environment where I'm, supporting the students. So if I'm asking them to complete an assignment or go over a page that I've created on, say, the American War for Independence, do I have a way to where the students can engage with me on the platform, in real time, and ask me questions about what they're learning? Because if they're, getting to the beginning of a unit and they start out lost, they're going to get to the end of it and probably still be lost. So I think having a using some type of an app within the platform to be able to engage with students while they're at home and answer their questions could be productive. One app I found on Schoology is, they call it the back channel chat. I don't know if that's the best app to use, but I think it'd be something I'd want to play around with and see if I could get it to work. And then there's a self-regulation, so having the teacher serve as a facilitator versus a transmitter of knowledge. So, creating a process where the students can obtain the knowledge and understanding that they need versus just listening to me stand up, at the smart board or whiteboard, whatever kind of board it is, and talk to them all day. Most students will zone out after the first 10 minutes of class, or they might not, but I don't know what the attention span of my students is going to be. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I thought my dog was doing something weird. Anyhow, so the next concept I wanted to talk about was the collaborative and authentic learning experiences. And so I think one of the main points that they were trying to get at there is that sometimes in school that it appears to, students and parents that the students are spending a lot of time learning about things that will not actually help them in the real world after high school. So, not learning real world skills. Uh, and I think something I'd want to, incorporate into my classroom is showing students, yes, some of what we're learning will apply to your life after high school. For example, um, I could be teaching about the Constitution, and then we get to the amendments about voting rights, and then I can show them, yes, it's important that you understand what your rights are as far as voting goes, and then how can you engage in that political process, because who you vote for can have a dramatic effect on people's lives. That might create, kind of a light bulb moment for the students. So next concept was assessment for learning. So obviously, I'm gonna have to find ways to assess whether or not the students are learning what I'm trying to teach them. Because if the knowledge isn't getting through, then I'm not doing my job. And so they talk about assessing different students differently. So for example, if I find a majority of students get fill in the blank and questions wrong, I might put in questions that requires you know the students to write half a dozen sentences about the question, because if the student has an opportunity on the test to maybe think through the question by writing out their answer, they might get to the correct answer versus just having to think of you know I can ask what year did the Stamp Act happen, but they're not they might not remember. They know what it is, which I think could for a lot of like topics I could be teaching is more important than remembering exact things like that. Sorry, somebody was had a message pop up on my screen. Then there's obviously technology integration, which is really the whole point of using technology. Integrating it for instructional purposes, and then so looking at the pedagogy and technology and content. So I think it shows I'll have to keep in mind what kind of content I'm using, because if I'm just throwing stuff up on my LMS platform and it's not actually useful for my students in gaining knowledge, then or checking their understanding, then it's not going to be useful. And then pedagogy, you know I don't really have a whole lot of a teaching experience. I don't really know what my pedagogy is yet, but I think as I'm developing my LMS platform, that'll cause me to maybe think about what kind of method I would like to use when I teach my students. But I think that part of technology integration will demand that um, I'll have to adjust my method based on what kind of students I get, and then just having constant knowledge of technology. I don't want to be the old teacher who barely knows how to work technology or is using stuff that's 5 years old. So those are my thoughts regarding this article, and I hope that kind of summarized them well.